Palaces of God. In 1194 there was a fire in a small town in northern France. The church had started in Roman times. Originally it commemorated some martyrs who had been thrown down a well. Then, 500 years later, it acquired a notable relic, Mary's birthing gown, the very tunic she had worn while giving birth to Jesus. No, seriously, it had her NHS number on it and everything. Anyway, so many pilgrims came to see this that they had to build a bigger church to accommodate all the visitors. And then it burned down. So they built a bigger one, a really big one of the biggest, most beautiful churches in the world. They built the astonishing, profligate wonder of stone and glass that is Chartres Cathedral. It took about 25 years, but the result was staggering, the grandest and tallest structure in Western Europe. Of the 176 stained glass windows, 43 were donated by the guilds in the town. But it was the work of the people, for the people. The windows contain messages from their sponsors. The window donated by the Shoemakers Guild, which depicts the story of the Good Samaritan, begins with a picture of the shoemakers at work, and then a picture of their offering the window to the cathedral. This was not a palace for the monarchy. It was palatial, certainly, but it was intended for everyone in the town. This indeed was the age of the great cathedrals. Between 1050 and 1350, in France alone, they built 80 cathedrals, 500 large churches, and many thousands of small parish churches. Some churchmen were singularly unimpressed by these buildings. Bernard of Clairvaux took one look at the Abbey of Saint-Denis in Paris and declared it nothing but vanity. "The walls of the church are ablaze with light and colour, while the poor of the church go hungry," he moaned. Old Grumpy Pants did have a point. They were fabulously expensive to build. Sometimes the money ran out. Beauvais, for example, began its cathedral the year Chartres was completed, and planned to go bigger and better. They completed the vaulted roof of the choir, but then the money ran out, and in 1284 it collapsed, leaving just the eastern end of the church still standing. If it had been completed, it would have been the biggest church in Europe. These churches were dripping with decoration and overdosed on symbolism. The doorways would be filled with sculptures of all the great figures of church history, figures from the Bible, saints and church fathers, local kings and queens. They were the symbols of the four evangelists, taken from Revelation 4:7. Matthew was a man because his gospel opens with the human lineage of Christ. Mark was a lion because his gospel begins as a creature roaring in the wilderness. Admittedly, the creature in question was John the Baptist, but you get the idea. Luke was an ox because his gospel opens with the sacrifice of Zacharias. And everyone knew that if you wanted to sacrifice anything properly, it had to be an ox. And John was an eagle, because eagles were the only animal that could look at the sun, and John's gospel was dazzling, or sunny, or something like that. Okay, so the symbols are complex. But then the whole church was a symbol. In 1286, just after the collapse of Beauvais, a monk called Guillaume Durand wrote a long treatise on how to read a church building. The four walls were built on the doctrine of the four evangelists. The foundation was faith, the door obedience, the floor humility. Some churches are built in the shape of a cross, to signify that we are crucified to the world and should tread in the steps of the crucified. Others are circular, to signify that the church hath been extended throughout the circle of the world, or maybe the crown of eternity which shall encircle our brows. The apse, so called because it projecteth a little from the wall, signifieth the lay portion of the faithful joined to Christ and the church. The crypts represent hermits who are devoted to a solitary life. The gargoyles represent evil spirits as flying from the holy walls. And so it goes on. Towers, windows, even the weather vane shaped like a cockerel, they all represent something, some aspect of faith. The cock at the summit of the church is the preacher, who preacheth boldly, and exciteth the sleepers to cast away the works of darkness. This means it's perfectly okay to describe the contents of a sermon as a load of cock. The point is that when you went into a medieval church or cathedral, you weren't just entering a building, you were going through the wardrobe into another world. Cathedrals and churches were outposts of the kingdom of God. They were, in the powerful phrase of the Celts, thin places, where heaven seemed to break through to earth. The heady smell of incense filled the air. Music was played. In 1287, in an act of blatant anti-bagpipe discrimination, the Council of Milan agreed that the organ should be the only musical instrument that may be used in church services. Songs were sung. The priests wore colourful and often sumptuous robes. There might even be the bones of a martyr nearby to add to the general numinousness, or numinosity. Anyway, this was what holiness was supposed to look like. Fact file on Chartres Cathedral. Okay. Name: the Cathedral of Our Lady of Chartres, aka Chartres Cathedral, or will you look at that? Nationality: French. Dates: 1194 to present. Appearance: oh gosh, enormous towers, astonishing sculpture, ravishingly beautiful stained glass, plus a lot of annoying plastic and scaffolding, at least when I went. Before it was famous, a small Roman church, famous for symbolising the glories of the medieval cathedrals. Why does it matter? Because it's the greatest Gothic-style building ever built? Because it remains one of the architectural wonders of the world? Because it represents the astonishing skill and craftsmanship of an entire community directed towards the glory of God? Maybe. Could you have a drink with it down the pub? No, but raise your glass in honour of the amazing craftsman who created it.